I'm Jessica Stutzman, and welcome back to the Millcreek Government Channel. Our places matter. The built landscape of Erie and Northwest Pennsylvania is a tangible expression of our richly layered social, cultural, and industrial history. Along with the natural landscape, it's the built environment that shapes our collective regional identity and sense of place. Joining us today to discuss historic preservation of iconic buildings within Erie County is Melinda Meyer, President of the Board of Directors for Preservation Erie. Melinda, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I absolutely love history. I know we've done a show in the past, and I think the stories of the past are so exciting, and you are just a wealth of knowledge. And I appreciate you being here to tell those stories to our viewers. So again, we're going to talk about historic preservation today, but what I want to know is, what does that term mean to you?
So when we talk about historic preservation, what we find is that it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So when we think about what is historic, we think about buildings, we think about places, we think about historic sites like monuments and battlefields. But you know what is historic and what matters to us also includes the corner bakery and our favorite ice cream parlor that's been on the same corner for 50 years. So all of those things kind of qualify as being historic and places that are worthy of preservation. So when we talk about historic preservation, we talk about the built environment, but we also include our stories, or what some preservationists have termed the storyscape of the community, right? So if we think about the collective memories of a community, we've got not just the places, but then we add in the people and the events and everything that we've kind of collectively experienced. And that is important to preserve as well. So when we really talk about historic preservation, we're talking about the full spectrum of our local history.
Why do you think it is so important to preserve these buildings and this cultural identity for the future?
So our community's historic places really have an important role in our community. First of all, they matter to us because we're emotionally tied to these places, right? You think about the school that you went to as an elementary school student, or you think about the church that your parents got married in. All of these places we're connected to emotionally. But in addition to that, these places are also important for education, right? We can use buildings like the Watson Curtsey Mansion or the Erie Maritime Museum or the Erie County Courthouse to tell stories about our community and pass that history from one generation to the next. So they're educational tools. And then something that we spend a lot of time talking about is really the economic benefit of our historic places. We've seen places like Level Manufacturing transition, be repurposed into Level Place, which now has apartments, and there's a school inside of it, and there's commercial space. So we can see historic assets like that change purposes, right? And be reused and become economic drivers. So there's lots of different reasons to really celebrate historic preservation.
And the one thing you just mentioned, and it kind of struck a chord with me, was when you said, about the place, maybe the church where your parents got married. I unfortunately was not able to get married at my parents' chapel, but it meant so much to me that they still kept the same bench sitting outside the church. Mm-hmm. So I have the picture of my parents sitting on the bench right after they got married, and I made sure that our wedding party also drove to the church, and my husband and I took a picture on the exact same bench in the exact same spot at the chapel. So, and you, like you said, it's just such a wonderful memory. It meant a lot to my parents, and it meant a lot to us. And I think, again, like you said, it drives that community spirit, and it really ties you to Erie or grounds you to Erie.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Why and when was Preservation Erie formed?
So Preservation Erie was started in 2007. There was a gap at the time. There wasn't any other group or individual in the community that really was taking charge of historic preservation. And at the time, we'd lost a couple of really important buildings, and the community was kind of feeling the loss of those buildings. And so a group of people got together and said, okay, we really need a group that focuses on the preservation of the buildings that matter to the community. So they met early on, just in different members' living rooms, and then eventually it came together and a nonprofit was created. And I think that if I have the numbers right, we're in our 12th year, if I've added correctly. We're in our 12th year, and we have a great board of directors. We are an all-volunteer organization. So our board of directors is really the driving force for the activity of the group. But then we have other people from the community who come and volunteer with us and help us get things done. So what we spend our time with, we do a lot of advocacy work. We do a lot of education. We provide a lot of technical assistance to homeowners and municipal leadership with regards to historic assets. So that's really what our core mission is about.
And you were right, when the community does lose an important building, I know that there's public outcry. So what can we do to protect our historic resources?
That's a great question. So there are lots of different things that we can do as a community to protect our resources. So if we're looking at the government, if we're looking at what local government can do, there are ordinances, there are best practices with historic preservation, and kind of a value or a love of historic preservation that can be woven into all other areas of the government, of local government. So that's one way. And right now we have, at the City of Erie level, the City of Erie about 5 months ago created a historic preservation task force, which will be looking at how best to implement historic preservation principles and strategies throughout the City of Erie. And I can tell you that right now that task force, we are talking about ordinances. We're looking at whether or not it's a good idea to create a local historic district that would be governed or regulated by the City of Erie. So again, that's one way that these resources can be protected. Another way is just to talk about the value of our historic resources, right? And build this kind of culture that appreciates our historic places. And that can be done at all levels. So part of it is doing what we're doing here and talking to people and about the value of historic places. And another way to do that would be to talk to kids. Get kids interested in our historic places and talk to them about what matters to them. So lots of different ways that we can protect our historic resources. I really think it's just about developing that appreciation or building on that appreciation that we already have. Most of us already have an appreciation for our downtowns and the buildings that matter to us. So.
And I think, again, I know when I go on vacation, I like to actually visit those historic walking districts and, take tours or at least do some shopping in those areas. And I think to make Erie's historic districts or sites, again, desirable and having people appreciate them, that's going to mean so much to the community. I know one of the things that we can do is place some of these buildings on the National Register of Historic Places. Can you talk about what that is and why it's so significant that a property be placed on this list?
Yeah, so the National Register of Historic Places, it was created by the Historic Preservation Act, which was passed in 1966, and it is the nation's list of historic resources. So these are the places that matter the most or have the most significance across the country. And you'll find individual properties listed on the National Register, but you'll also find groupings of properties that we refer to as historic districts listed on the National Register. So we have a plethora of historic resources in Erie County that are listed on the National Register. So if we're looking at the city of Erie, we have 4 different historic districts that are listed on the National Register. One is the West 6th Street Historic District, which is probably the one that's most well known. That is Millionaire's Row.
Right.
So what other historic districts are listed on the National Register? We have downtown Northeast. We have downtown Union City, downtown Waterford, Lawrence Park. So all of those downtowns are listed as being significant enough resources that they appear on the nation's list of historic resources. Individual properties, we've got a handful of those as well. Let's see. I believe the Sturgeon House in Fairview is listed on the National Register. There are a handful, though, of individual properties throughout the county that are listed.
And what's the benefit to being on this list? I heard that it increases property value because, again, you have this historically significant house or property. Are there any other benefits?
Yeah, so with listing on the National Register, for individual properties, what probably is the greatest benefit is the listing itself. So for homeowners or property owners to be able to say, our property, this building is important enough, it appears on the nation's list of buildings that are most important. For historic districts that have commercial properties, there are other benefits. So there are historic preservation tax credits that are available through the federal government, and then the state of Pennsylvania also has a state historic preservation tax credit program. So when you have a property that a developer wants to invest in and they want to repurpose it, they can apply for tax credits if that property is either listed on the National Register as an individual building or is a contributing building to a historic district. So that is another benefit of being within or being listed on the National Register.
Now, does a property or a building, does it have to be 100 years old, or does it have to have any, significant features? And how difficult is it to get on that list?
Yeah, so the National Park Service has this magic number of 50. So in order to qualify, a property or a district needs to be at least 50 years old or older. Now, there is a caveat to that. If it is an incredibly significant event or place, then that 50-year requirement can be waived. But in general, it has to be at least 50 years old. And then there are other criteria. So you can make the case for listing on the National Register by saying that this place is important because something important happened here. So maybe an inventor lived here, or someone who grew up to be the president lived here. Or it can be an event. This is the house where the civil rights movement was created. This is the house where the women's suffragette movement was started, right? Those kinds of major events. So you can look at history. You can also look at whether or not the designer or the architect was a master in their field. So is this building or does this district represent really unique work from a master architect or designer or community planner? And then, of course, you can also look at archaeological resources. So it's not just the built environment, but also archaeological sites can also qualify for listing on the National Register.
Wonderful. And there's a website for that.
There is,
okay.
Yeah.
And what resources exist for the people who own these properties? Are there any resources through Preservation Erie or any other groups that are out there that, again, want to see these buildings preserved?
So this is always a challenging question to answer because it's a yes and no. So it depends on the type of property and where the property is located. So if we're thinking about Erie County, for those people who own either commercial or residential property in the city of Erie, there are a couple of different programs. There are programs through the city of Erie. There are programs that are administered through some of the neighborhood associations, like our West Bayfront and the Bayfront East Side Task Force. So it's really it's really reaching out to certain organizations to determine what resources may exist in your geographic footprint. The Erie Redevelopment Authority also has a lead abatement program that can be used to help with the lead remediation in historic properties. For Preservation Erie, we receive grant funding to work in a couple of different communities. So right now we're working in Albion Borough, and we're wrapping up work in Waterford.
And Preservation Erie, you guys have done some really neat projects over the years, and you have a presence throughout Erie County, like you just mentioned Waterford. What initiatives or projects are you most proud of?
So I think the work that we're doing throughout the county in providing technical assistance and support is something that we've really ramped up within the last couple of years, and I think we're really proud of the work that we've been doing throughout the county. So a year and a half ago, we wrapped up work with Lawrence Park in helping them get the Lawrence Park Historic District listed on the National Register of Historic Places. That historic district has 810 different resources, and it took about 2 years. We worked with a consulting team to prepare the nomination. In total, it was probably about a $25,000 project.
Wow.
But Lawrence Park is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places. We are doing work in Union City. Union City is just about to finish work on their historic preservation plan, which lays out some really great action steps for downtown Union City. In Girard, we've helped Girard start a facade grant program, and over the course of our first year, our first cycle of facade grants, we saw close to $40,000 or $50,000 worth of improvements in the downtown. That's all really great work, and we have to kind of give a shout out to the Erie County Gaming Revenue Authority. Many of these programs are being funded through their grant programs, but I think we've had really good success in working with all of those different communities.
And what I want to talk about is the Erie County Cultural Heritage Plan. Tell me what went into that.
So that project, that too was a 2-year project. Preservation Erie partnered with the Erie County Department of Planning. So municipalities or like counties, a county is required to have a comprehensive plan. Within the comprehensive plan, they are required to have a component that talks about the care of historic resources. So the county's comp plan had this historic preservation piece that was 20 years old, and we all felt it was time to update. So we spent about 2 years working with a consulting firm to engage the community in a conversation about places that matter, and what really should the county be doing in regards to preserving our historic resources. So the end result was this beautiful plan that was adopted by Erie County Council in 2017, and it talks about stewardship, and it talks about building capacity and helping our municipal leadership really kind of better understand their historic resources and what tools exist for helping them preserve them. And that plan is available through the Erie County Department of Planning's website, if people want to take a look at it.
Wonderful. I'm so glad that was a success. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Greater Erie Awards?
So the Greater Erie Awards, this is Preservation Erie's annual event. We decided about 7 years ago to create an event where we could acknowledge those in the community that were doing incredible work to repurpose buildings and or were good stewards of their buildings. So we created the Greater Erie Awards. Every year, we seek nominations from the community, and we'll see anywhere from 10 to maybe 20 nominations come in. We evaluate those and determine which 3 to 6 are going to be receiving awards. And so the Greater Erie Awards are held in April or May every year. May happens to be National Preservation Month. I believe the last couple of years we've held it at Junior's Last Laugh, which is a great venue, also a historic building. And we've had a great time acknowledging those in the community that are doing great work. We've acknowledged the barbershop in Little Italy that had their front window smashed in by a dump truck. They completely restored the front of their building. They could have done a lot of different things, but instead they decided to preserve the look and restore that front facade. So there's the barbershop in Little Italy, Sham Market over at 12th on East 12th Street. They took this great old marketplace and have really made it into a neighborhood destination. So lots of different folks we've been able to recognize.
And you said that's in May.
It's in May,
Okay.
April or May.
April or May. And Melinda, we're just about out of time here, but one thing I want to know from you, and I'm going to put you on the spot, do you have a favorite historic site or building of your own?
Yeah, wow, that is a pointed question. I do not have a favorite location, but I'm a history buff. I've known since I was probably in 6th grade that I was going to study local history. I was going to write history, right? So I've known for a very long time that I've been a history geek. So I appreciate any and all historic places.
That's a very nice, unbiased answer. I was trying to think of a few in my head, and I don't know if I could choose. So I'm with you. I think they're all beautiful. So where can our viewers reach out to either you or to Preservation Erie for more information? So
our email address is info@preservationerie.org. We've got our website, which is preservationerie.org. We also can be found on Facebook. Preservation Erie is our name on Facebook. And any of those avenues offer ways in which people can communicate with us. We're always looking for new volunteers. We're always wanting to talk to people who own historic buildings and need help. That's really what we're here for.
Melinda, thank you so much again for sharing your wealth of knowledge and for really bringing Preservation Erie to the Millcreek Government Channel so we could learn more information about that.
Sounds good. Thank you for the invite to be here.
Thank you. Viewers, again, preserving Erie means so much to our past history and to our future history. And we just want you to learn more information on how to preserve your favorite building or your own property. And again, another way to get involved on the Preservation Erie website is a great search tool for researching historic buildings in Erie. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Preservation Erie, and they will have a wealth of resources for you to look up and to go over. So I want to thank you for tuning into the Millcreek Government Channel, and until next time, have a great day.